Kona is the pinnacle of endurance sport. You have to be the best of the best to race there. It's a race that chews people up. You've got to be in the ultimate condition and have the perfect day of racing.
So in the last video, we came up with a list of the favorites for Kona, and to be honest, that one was pretty easy for me to put together. The likes of Sam Laidlow behind me, Christian Blumenfeld, it's a pretty straightforward list. I mean, getting it in the right order was pretty tough. I had some arguments with myself, you might have seen, but overall, pretty easy. However, this one, the challengers, was much harder because there's so many guys that could be on this list. I've had a hard time narrowing it down to keep this shorter, but if they're not on this list, they're probably in my Dark Horses video coming out next, so stay tuned for that one. But here we go, without further ado, these are the guys who I think could challenge at least for a top 5, potentially even a podium, and then if absolutely all the stars align, they could win the race. But all these guys behind me on the screen would have to have a pretty bad day for that. So let's dive into it. Starting off the list, I have gone with Matthew Marquart, and I had to put him at the top of the list because right now he is actually the favorite to win the Ironman Pro Series, because out of the 3 races he's done, he's almost got a perfect score at each of them, not losing much time behind the leaders. And that sets him up perfectly for Kona, which is worth more points, as well as 70.3 Worlds, which is also worth more points. So he's got all this momentum to come into these races and get a good result and become possibly the first ever Ironman Pro Series champion. And he's got all the skills to do so. He's a front pack swimmer, unreal swimmer. He's a phenomenal biker. We've seen that this year more than ever. And his run, that might be the only reason people doubt him at this race, but last year at Ironman World Champs in Nice, he ran a 2:43 off that hard bike. He ran a 2:46 in Lake Placid, which is such a hard course. And he did well in Texas in the heat earlier this year. And on top of that, he's such a smart guy. So you'd have to imagine he's prepped really well for this one, for the heat. He's won it before in 2022 as an age grouper. There's just no real reason to doubt this guy other than maybe finally one time he got his balance wrong of being a med student and a researcher while preparing for this race, but I can't see that happening, and that's why I really think he could snag a top 5 here. Coming in then as my second challenger is Cameron Warf. Kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. He's been racing Kona since 2017, where he really came in and changed the bike ride on the island. He set the bike course record there, and a lot of people leveled up their game because of him. He's 41 years old, still as passionate as ever. He says he's constantly learning new things, and Nike, who's one of his partners, is so invested in him continuing on as he gets older, and there's no signs of him retiring anytime soon. But the real reason I've got him on my list this year is because this, as he said on a recent Triathlon Therapy podcast, is a year that hasn't been like any other for his preparation like Kona. It's been perfect for him. His whole goal this year was to get as fit as he possibly could with the Ineos Grenadiers team, but he also managed to sneak in 3 Ironman races and a 70.3, including a 49-minute swim at South Africa and a 2:44 marathon at Ironman Victoria Gasteiz, where he got 3rd place. So unbelievable results amidst a busy year for the Ineos Grenadiers, and now he's got what he said is the perfect block leading up into the race. 6 to 8 weeks, he said that is the perfect amount for him. Otherwise, more would be just too much. Obviously, his bike's insane, but it seems like lately it's not insane enough to catch up from a bad swim to the likes of Sam Laidlow, Magnus Ditlev, or to get away from the likes of Lionel and the other Uber bikers coming from behind. So I don't think it's that big of a strength anymore. And then on the run, I mean, that 2:44, it's as quick as he's gone, but now focusing into this block, I think he could run as low as 2:42 on the island, although he's never done a good marathon yet on the island before. So that will be a big question mark, but not as big a question mark as a swim. He has swam low 50 before here, but that was on a day when the 3rd pack was swimming pretty fast. And I think he really needs to jump into that 2nd pack with the likes of Magnus Ditlev if he wants to make a difference in this race. So he's kind of in the same boat as Lionel, hoping to swim probably low 50s, hopefully making the 2nd pack. And if he does, all bets are off. But then speaking of Alon Sanders, I've got to throw him in here as a challenger. I think I agree with most of you that put on the poll on the website that Lionel probably going to finish 4th through 7th in this race, but I really think he could challenge for the podium on a perfect day, especially if some other guys have an off day. It's just so hard for me to believe that it is going to be this perfect day for him. Other than Oceanside earlier on in the year where he had an insane swim there, we haven't seen too much other inclination that he's going to do another swim like that. Unfortunately, Ironman Canada had a canceled swim, and then he's got those nutrition issues on top of that, so I just don't know if we're going to see that sub 240 run, which I think he will need come October 26. But with all that said, he looks like he's in a great place on the vlog. He's loving doing what he's doing. He's being advised by Jan on the journey, and yeah, I think he could have still a stellar day. But my heart said he's either going to have his perfect day or he's going to blow up. So let's hope for that perfect day. The next challenger on my list then is Braden Curry, and I think he could easily fall into the dark horses category here because I think many people will have forgotten about Braden with so much unlucky results in the last few years. I mean, he's had penalties, mechanicals, flat tires, sickness, including a littering penalty at Ironman Nice last year where he ended up finishing 16th, even though he was in such a good position. But Braden on his day is absolutely unreal, and he's like a couple other athletes on this list who's just all in on Kona, always has been. I remember watching him back in the day when he first started challenging for Kona after he was coming off of Xterra and racing coast to coast, and just being like, man, this guy has that dog in him to win in Kona. And I still think that today, and especially just after all this misfortune you have to imagine he is just dying for some luck to be on his side. Braden has all the skills in his tool belt. He's a front pack swimmer thanks to the help of JR and Noosa. His bike, I think, could be his weakness. We saw that in Ironman Cairns earlier this year where he finished 2nd. Matt Burton put so much time into him. However, in a good pack and with Race Ranger and the dynamics that plays into the race, I think he could hang on to a good group. And then the run, well, that's where Braden is world class. We saw him do a 2:37 in the heat last year, so I think that's definitely on the cards for him again. And what we're talking about is going to be a real runner's race. So all about the bike for me, for Braden, but I think he is definitely a challenger for a top 5 here, and I know he wants more.
Kona is definitely the biggest race of my life. It's what I thrive for.
But the next challenger is pretty similar to Braden, such an all-around athlete, and that's Rudy von Berg. And he got 20th place last time out in Kona, but he did not have a great block leading up into that race with stomach issues. And this time around, he's had a nice big block leading up into it. It's also been his goal all year, even though he's been on the T100 Tour. He hasn't really prioritized at all, hasn't had good results at those races, but I think he's going to be a real factor at this race. Like I said, he's all around. He's a front pack swimmer, although he didn't swim front pack at the last time out there, so that'll be already an immediate improvement. His bike has really gone from strength to strength, and speaking of, he is on a new Factor bike right now, and that is a big deal considering that Trek dropped him last year despite being their top American athlete, so I think he's got a point to prove on that new bike. And his run has also gone from strength to strength at the long distance. The 3 results I'm looking at that make me really think Rudy can be a challenger here is Nice last year, 4th place, insane all-around performance. Ironman Florida, well, we know what he did there, American record, 2:38 run, unbelievable. And then also Challenge Roth this year where he finished 3rd place behind Magnus and Tom Bishop, but it's still another solid all-day round, even though I don't think he fully prepared into that race. But overall, couple this big build that he's got going in instead of like last time, as well as all the lessons he learned from the island, I think Rudy's in the perfect spot for a good race here. And then finally, my last challenger is very similar to Rudy von Berg, and that is Daniel Baekkegard. Have to put him on here like Rudy. Doesn't have many weaknesses. His results have been really good over the long distance, the likes of Ironman Western Australia, where he went 7:34 with a 2:37 marathon. He also ran a 2:37 at Ironman Israel, and I think his success that he got in London with the podium there at that T100 race, despite a bad race in Ibiza, I think it still gave him a lot of confidence that he needed coming into Kona. He's had a good block, it looks like, at home training for this. and I think he's ready for another Western Australia type performance. Last time out in 2022 as well, he DNF'd, so I think he's looking for some revenge. He had some numbness in his leg that caused him to not be able to finish. But he was a little bit hard to put on this list. He has been quite inconsistent, a little bit of a roller coaster season for him. But I know he wants to be the best in the world. He has that mindset. And I think because of some of the inconsistencies and not having some good races, I think he'll be coming into this one pretty fresh, especially from training from his home base, not doing a training camp anywhere. I think it could be a good advantage for him. Hopefully he's heat prepped and he's ready to go. But that's it for my challengers. Next up is those dark horses, and you better be ready to take some notes because I think these guys could be really, really good. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in that video. Cheers.